Very good morning to all of you. So we are starting with the news analysis video for 12th of October 2023. So Operation Ajay, it is launched to set to evacuate the Indian nationals from Israel. So this is the name of the operation. And apart from this, we have taken up the important and relevant points regarding the conflict, what is India's stand, and what was basically what should be done or what can be the possible solution for this. So this will be the second evacuation this year after we saw Operation Kaveri that brought back several thousand Indian citizens from the conflict on Sudan in April. So this is one thing. So when we talk about specifically development in the hilly states, now several obviously important things need to be considered after we are seeing the frequency and the intensity of the disasters that are being witnessed in the hilly states. So when we talk about the tourism perspective, that is one thing which attracts major tourists. So now we need to focus upon having a proper tourist management plan for the states, because that in a way leads to the tourist burden. And if you're not able to, or if you are basically mismanaging the tourism and the facilities that you have, so that also impacts the environment of the state. Apart from this, when we talk about development of hydel projects, so that also needs to be considered in the sense that which location is being chosen, and we need to ensure that we are not going ahead with so much of changing the course of the river or change in the direction of the river water. So that is one thing. Here you can see strengthening disaster management is important. State Emergency Operations Center, that would be upgraded, strengthening of the fire safety infrastructure. So these are some basic things. Treatment for the prevention of landslides. So that is something again which comes under focus, because even we are seeing with increased deforestation and we can say with so much of construction activities, this has led to even increased incidences of landslides in different states. At the same time, we have been going through land subsidence as it was witnessed in Joshimat, and this was again witnessed in Jammu and Kashmir also. So how we are going ahead with the construction activities, what technique and what methodology are we following and adopting when it comes to even urbanization in the hilly states. So that becomes important. So these are few relevant things which becomes important. So Pravesh, you want to add up something new here?
No, there's nothing to add. You will continue.
Okay. So UN pending reforms, one of them, the Security Council reform, it is a song in a loop. So more than 3 decades after the debate first started over कि UN में जो fundamental reforms है वो किए जाने चाहिए. So it's been 3 decades, 30 years have passed. So this issue still appears to basically it is still pending, and it has resurfaced at the ongoing General Assembly session of the world body. So here we have the president of Turkey saying the Security Council has ceased to be the guarantor of the world security, and it has become a battleground for the political strategies of only 5 countries. So it becomes important when we are seeing different countries rising to power, they're becoming global powers. So it is important that they have the representation in the Security Council. When we talk about multilateralism, so why power needs to be concentrated when we talk about the veto powers only in the hands of 5 countries. So when we talk about the relevancy of the UNSC, that needs to be looked into. So apart from this, Politically, it is untenable that the 5 permanent members, which includes China, France, Russia, UK, and UK, they enjoy the position and the privilege of a veto over any council resolution. So this is a veto power that they basically, we can't use the word misuse here, but in a way it appears to be happening in that manner only. And what merely by virtue of having won a war 76 years ago, so that is basically the power was that was the veto power was given to these 5 countries. So this is something which is historically taken decision on the basis of some historical facts, but that relevancy has declined with time in today's world, with change even global geopolitical dynamics. So in case of China, the word one, it needs to be placed within inverted commas as well. So these are few things. An unjust situation in terms of equity. So when we talk about again the relevancy, so in that also the element of equity also becomes important. Equity in the sense ki different regions they are divided. So even representation जब हम बात करते हैं global south की, so that is also one of the important things under consideration, or that is one of the demand of even the global south countries as well. So problem of reforming the Security Council, it is akin to a malady in which a number of doctors gather around a patient. They all agree on the diagnosis, but they cannot agree on the prescription. So diagnosis is clear. The Security Council reflects the geopolitical realities of 1945 and not of today. So this is one thing. And when the UN, it was founded in 1945, so council, it consisted of 11 members out of the total UN membership of 51 countries. And in other words, we can say that some 22% जो member states है, they were on the Security Council. But आज की अगर हम बात करें तो right now the UN membership stands as 193 member states of the UN and only 15 members of the council, that is fewer than 8%. So one change ever made to the original charter was in 1965, जब Security Council, it was expanded from 11 members to 15 by adding 4 more elected non-permanent members. So many more countries, absolute number में आप बात करो या relative number में आप बात करो, the membership, they do not feel adequately represented on the body. So this needs to be considered. Apart from this, different stances of the countries. So let's understand what different stances. Security Council is clearly ripe for the reform to bring it into the second quarter of the 21st century. But for every state that feels it deserves a place in the Security Council, and especially handful of the countries which believes their status in the world ought to be recognized as being in no way inferior to at least 3 of the existing permanent members हैं, there are several who know that they will not benefit from any reform. So even यहाँ पे भी countries, they have different stances and terms. If you feel with their rising global power, they need that recognition, which needs to be again equally at the equal level of other permanent 5-member countries. And कुछ ऐसी countries है जिनको ऐसा feel होता है कि अगर reforms किए भी जाएंगे तो उनको इतना ज़्यादा benefit नहीं होगा. तो even this is there. So small countries जो हैं, they make up more than half of the UN membership. They accept the reality and the content to compete occasionally for a 2-year non-permanent seat on the council. But जो medium-sized and large countries हैं, which are the rivals of the prospective beneficiaries, they deeply resent the prospect of a select few countries breaking free of their current second-rank status in the world body. So part of the problem is that the bar to amending the UN Charter, it has been set rather high. So even it is very difficult to even amend the UN Charter. So any amendment requires 2/3 majority of the overall membership. In other words, 129 of the 193 states in General Assembly, and it would further have to be ratified by other 2/3 of the member states. So ratification, it is usually a parliamentary procedure, and basically to meet these numbers, it is a difficult task. Apart from this, continuing gridlock, so while the debate keeps going round in circles for decades, gridlock continues in the Security Council, as most vividly illustrated recently over the Ukraine conflict, when we saw a permanent member of the Security Council invaded a sovereign UN member state and the council proved powerless to respond. So talking about Russia. So Russia's increasing resort to the veto, it has blocked the resolutions on Ukraine. So that's how even definitely Russia is a party to this war. It is between directly Russia and Ukraine. And jo veto powers hai, so this was the thing that I was highlighting in the beginning. Ki in a way misuse hi kiya ja raha hai, and we are not able to, resolve this war. Because Russia is misusing its veto powers because जो resolutions present किए जा रहे हैं, Russia is blocking them. So similar obstructionism जो देखने को मिल रहा है by the West countries has affected the proposals to reform the financial institutions also, जिनको हम Bretton Woods institution बोलते हैं, जिसमें World Bank, IMF are included. So yet this is only global system we have got that brings all the countries together on a common platform. So UN एक ऐसा platform है जहाँ पे we are having the global system or the global countries, they are coming together on this single platform. So reforms become important, its relevancy to the current challenges, to the current change situation becomes important. So can we afford to let it fade into ineffectiveness and irrelevance? So बहुत बड़ा question है, and that is why undertaking these reforms is also important at the same time. So anything else, Pravesh, want to raise any question or want to discuss any other dimension related to this topic?
Yeah, I think this is my personal view that this UN Security Council reform, which we are talking, and which other G4 nations are also focusing upon, this is not going to happen at least for 10 to 20 years, to for sure. The reason because of which the countries which are uh, proclaiming their membership on the basis of their achievements and their endeavor in the in the United Nations and their agencies, they are not able to compete the countries who are the current part of the UN Security Council. Number two, all the authors which timely and every day comes and say a number of articles about the Security Council membership, inclusivity, and more reforms, nothing is actually impacting those countries because they are very much silent on these. And obviously, the geopolitical tensions which are happening across the world, they will not let the Security Council countries to lose their grip over the world political affairs. So definitely, it is not going to happen for sure for 10 to 20 years. Now, what we can do rather than
Here
rather
this
than
becomes vague. You
let me
are saying
just complete
okay.
rather than focusing on these international organizations like give us membership. There are professors and there are scholars in the political science optional who suggest that rather than going and ravaging behind these security councils and UN like agencies, India and all these developing countries who are heading towards developed status, they should try to come on a common platform, and they should try to create such a platform that should have appeal even in the UN, so the UN open its gate for them.
So herein, this is happening in a way when we talk about even G20. So this is one thing, and as you were saying in the beginning, ki you feel that for next 10 to 20 years, you find that this is not going to happen. So I feel ki saying this is a little vague. कि आप इतना शॉर्टली नहीं बोल सकते हो. वी नीड टू इंश्योर कि हम थोड़ा बैलेंस्ड व्यू लेके चले. हम यहाँ जो टॉपिक डिस्कस कर रहे हैं दैट इज रेलेवेंसी ऑफ यूनाइटेड नेशंस. तो रिफॉर्म्स करना इंपॉर्टेंट. अगर रिफॉर्म्स नहीं किए जाएंगे तो इट वुड बी बिकमिंग इररेलेवेंट, और कोई इंटरनेशनल बॉडी ज्यादा रेलेवेंट हो जाएंगे जहाँ पे अगेन जो how things are changing if they are factoring in. So this
Okay,
is
so
the whole debate round.
you are saying, I accept that. I'm saying wait.
Hmm.
Tell me that how the United Security Council is getting reformed. Especially, you gave the example of G20. Let's give me the example.
I am not saying कि it is getting reformed. वही तो issue है कि वो reform करना है, but वो reforms हो नहीं रहे हैं. Last 30 years से हम यही बात कर रहे हैं कि reforms
So on the
किए जाने
basis of that, I'm saying if 30 years, since 30 years nothing has happened, more 20 years nothing will happen. This is my personal view. I'm saying
it is your personal stand. Okay. I'm just countering that कि according to me saying this is a little vague thing. हमें इस चीज पे ज्यादा focus करना चाहिए जो again जो main debate है. But that's your standard. That's completely fine.
actually, if we talk about this rational debate, so give me the solution.
Solution is that we need to go ahead with these reforms. जो P5 countries है, they need to acknowledge जो changes हो रहे हैं.
Why they will
Definitely इसमें it would involve जो उनकी अभी current power है वो थोड़ी reduce होगी. But अगर उनको UN को relevant रखना है, जिस तरीके से UN help किया, as we were just talking towards the end, कि UN ही एक ऐसी body है globally जहाँ पे सारी countries, almost we can say all the countries are a member to it. तो it all now depends, more depends upon what P5 countries wants.
I think this reform which you are talking, if the United Security Council would have been so much open-minded, so reform would have taken place. Number one. Second, there are a number of resolutions which get passed in the United Nations General Assembly. For an example, on Ukraine, then on climate change, then on other areas. But United Security Council, one or the another country, one or the second day, they actually disrupt that.
Yeah.
So unless and until they actually become open-minded, and that is obviously a very hard task. So
Yeah.
nothing is going to happen.
हाँ, that's what I'm saying कि उनको acknowledge करना important है जो change हो रहा है और reforms की importance recognize करना is important. Okay, so we'll take up this article, but we'll keep it politically neutral. So here we see Modinomics fails to buck the trend. So there's been intense focus on India's growth performance of late. So India की growth performance definitely we've been talking about कि even जो developed world में कुछ banks fail हुए उसका India पे इतना ज़्यादा impact नहीं हुआ. This was we saying कि Indian economy इतनी resilient है या इतना robust momentum से we are continuing कि external factors का इतना ज़्यादा impact नहीं हुआ. तो let's understand the trajectory, क्या trends है, क्या weaker points.
Mansi, I think we can continue from this topic because this is highly political, and this is not giving any such authoritative stance.
No, we can like just take up only the objective things. We'll not go into much details of it. Like we've been talking about reforms in the statistical system, so that can be again definitely this is one of the important subtopics. So reforms in Indian statistical system, it can further make our economy much more strengthened, much more resilient when we talk about now relevancy of the data, because data analytics is part of every, we can say, more apt and effective decision making process. Apart from that, when we talk about the GDP growth after the pandemic, it may show that Indian economy is relatively, it is in good light compared to the other major economies, but it misses a crucial aspect of the economic management during the present government's term in office. So this is how the economy performed during the COVID-19 year from 2020 to 21. In that year, most of the BRICS countries and the United States, they contracted less than India did. All these countries, they had also adopted a stronger macroeconomic stimulus. So अब ये हम clearly नहीं बोल सकते. This is again a topic of debate. जो contraction of GDP हुआ during the pandemic in India, it is almost related to that dogmatic refusal. Okay, ठीक है. So एक मतलब जो important निकाल सकते हैं हम point यहाँ से statistical system के around ही बात कर सकते हैं. So what are the concerns about the government's fact check unit when we talk about countering the fake news or misinformation, the rumors? So what do the Information Technology Intermediary Guidelines and Digital Media Ethics Code Amendment Rules 2023 have been made public? What do they say about identifying the fake news? And क्या again एक process suggest किया गया है under these rules? So who has filed petitions? So petitions be filed की गई against these rules. What has the court observed about this editorial content online? So here we see Bombay High Court. It reserved its verdict in a batch of petitions जो challenge कर रही थी constitutionality of these rules. And the rules, they permit एक fact check unit बनाया जाएगा of the union government to identify जितनी भी again online fake and false news, misleading online content है related to the business of central government, and that would be demanding its removal. So firstly, though, it is only specific to the central government. So again, I don't think कि इसको सिर्फ central government के perspective से देखना चाहिए. It should be seen in general. अगर कोई भी fake news है, तो ultimately वो public interest को ही hamper करेगी. So this should be one of the considerations. इसके अलावा यहाँ पे we
No, I
have.
think this is because of the matter comes under the union list only, na?
No, तो मैटर ठीक है, मैटर कम्स अंडर द यूनियन लिस्ट. मैं वो नहीं कह रही हूँ, मैं बोल रही हूँ कि जो भी ऑनलाइन कंटेंट है, वेदर यहाँ पे बात हो रही है कि अगर कोई ऑनलाइन कंटेंट फेक है, अगर वो सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट से रिलेटेड है, अगर वो उसको इम्पैक्ट कर रहा है, तभी उसको फेक या फॉल्स या मिसलीडिंग कंटेंट कैटेगराइज किया जाएगा. तो मैं बोल रही हूँ कि इंस्टेड ऑफ सीइंग इट फ्रॉम दिस प्रिजन की सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट पे इम्पैक्ट होगा या जो प्लान्स हैं या जो भी राइट्स है वो वायलेट होगी, तो इसको थोड़ा जनरलाइज तरीके से देखना चाहिए ना. इसको हम सेंट्रल
ये
गवर्नमेंट
आप ही कह रहे हैं ना कि स्टेट गवर्नमेंट को ही पावर देनी चाहिए इस चीज की.
नहीं नहीं, मैं स्टेट गवर्नमेंट को पावर देने की बात नहीं कर रही. मैं बोल रही हूँ कि इन जनरल जब आप बात करते हो आइडेंटिफिकेशन ऑफ फेक न्यूज ऑनलाइन, तो आप अब यहाँ पे जो बात हो रही है वो ये बोल रही है इट शुड बी रिलेटेड टू द बिजनेस ऑफ द सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट। अगर कोई ऐसी इंफॉर्मेशन विच इज रिलेटेड टू द बिजनेस ऑफ ओनली सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट, तभी आप उसको फेक न्यूज कैटेगराइज करोगे। तो मैं ये बोल रही हूँ ये नहीं होना चाहिए। इसको आप, इसका जो एम्बिट है और वाइडन अप हो जाना चाहिए इन द कॉन्टेक्स्ट कि अगर वो इन जनरल पब्लिक इंटरेस्ट को किसी भी तरीके से वो इंफॉर्मेशन हैम्पर कर रही है, तो इट शुड बी कैटेगराइज्ड एज फेक न्यूज एंड उसको देन इट नीड्स टू बी रिमूव्ड फ्रॉम द ऑनलाइन प्लेटफॉर्म। तो मैं ये चीज बोल रही हूँ।
मतलब प्रॉपर कोडिफिकेशन देना चाहिए जनरलाइज करके।
हम्म। सो यहाँ पे अगेन ये थोड़ा डिटेल में कि अमेंडमेंट क्या बात कर रही है। तो रूल नंबर 3 ऑफ द आईटी रूल्स, it deals with the responsibilities of the intermediaries. So they are now under obligation to make reasonable efforts to ensure कि users they do not post, display or upload any kind of fake information which is identified as fake, false or misleading by this fact check unit of central government in respect of any business of the central government. So यही चीज मैं highlight कर रही थी क्योंकि बिल्कुल specific बोल रहा है। And apart from this, a safe harbor safeguard, it exempts the intermediaries from the liability for any third party information which is made available or hosted by them. So this is a part of it. जो कहीं ना कहीं जो intermediaries हैं उनको एक तरीके से protect करता है for the third party information which is hosted by them. So what did the High Court had to say? So early on these proceedings in April, Bombay High Court, it observed कि जो amended rules है, no matter how well intentioned, they lack the necessary safeguards. So जो necessary safeguards हैं, they are missing according to the Bombay High Court. So court expressed the opinion that prima facie the rules they do not seem to offer protection for fair criticism of the government like parody and satire. तो यहाँ पे थोड़ा सा we can say कि concentration of powers only in the hands of the fact checking unit वो मिसयूज किया जा सकता है। बिकॉज अगेन ये जो चीज हाईलाइट की गई है प्रोटेक्शन फॉर फेयर क्रिटिसिज्म। अब आप फेयर क्रिटिसिज्म को कैसे आइडेंटिफाई करोगे वो एक पूरा आई वुड से एक अभी राइट नाउ इट इज एन एम्बिगुअस थिंग। सो दिस नीड्स टू बी रिकग्नाइज्ड। अदरवाइज when we talk about even importance of criticism जो आपको आपकी weakness या you know ऐसे प्रॉब्लमैटिक एरियाज हाईलाइट करते हैं, तो आप इम्प्रूवमेंट की तरफ कैसे मूव करोगे? सो इफ दिस इज
इसका सोल्यूशन आई थिंक ये हो सकता है कि rather than having total the bureaucracy or the bureaucrats into this committee to identify the fake news, we should have some retired judges also.
हाँ, दैट कैन बी वन थिंग बट अपार्ट फ्रॉम दिस सोल्यूशन ये भी हो सकता है कि वाई ओनली फैक्ट चेकिंग यूनिट, देन कुछ ऐसे लाइक ऑनलाइन प्रोविजंस भी होने चाहिए कि सिटीजन्स के पास भी पावर होनी चाहिए इन ऑर्डर टू कैटेगराइज एनी आर्टिकल और या एनी इंफॉर्मेशन एज फेक न्यूज या विच इज जनरेटिंग समथिंग मिस इन्फॉर्मेशन ऑनलाइन। तो मतलब मल्टीपल मीन्स होने चाहिए, नॉट ओनली फैक्ट एक फैक्ट चेक यूनिट। So this can be one thing. Apart from this,
नहीं, आई थिंक ये थोड़ा प्रॉब्लमेटिक हो जाएगा कि हर इंसान किसी न्यूज को बता रहा है कि ये फेक न्यूज है।
नहीं, लेकिन फिर वो फाइनल डिसीजन भी नहीं होना चाहिए ना, वो हाईलाइट हो जाएगा। अगर मल्टीपल नंबर ऑफ पीपल दे आर हाईलाइटिंग वन सेम न्यूज एज टू बी फेक न्यूज, तो कोई प्रॉब्लम हो सकती है ना। फिर उसमें वी नीड टू लुक इनटू कि कोई प्रॉब्लम है कि नहीं, उसके बाद आप उसको करो रिमूव। एंड एक और क्वेश्चन जो बॉम्बे हाई कोर्ट ने रेज किया दैट वाज कि व्हाई देयर इज अ सडन नीड फॉर अ फैक्ट चेक यूनिट। तो ये भी एक प्रॉब्लमैटिक थिंग अकॉर्डिंग टू बॉम्बे हाई कोर्ट उनको लगा, पॉइंटिंग आउट कि जो प्रेस इंफॉर्मेशन ब्यूरो है इट हैज बीन एफिशिएंटली फैक्ट चेकिंग फॉर इयर्स, तो अभी सेपरेटली फैक्ट चेकिंग यूनिट की क्या जरूरत पड़ी। सो ऑल्सो रेफरिंग टू अनडिफाइंड टर्म्स इन द रूल्स लाइक फेक, फॉल्स, मिसलीडिंग। सो यहाँ पे भी प्रॉपर डेफिनेशन होनी चाहिए या बेसिस होने चाहिए आप कैसे या on what basis you will be categorizing something as fake, false or misleading. So एक ambiguity यहाँ पे भी identify की गई है। Apart
No,
from
I
this,
think this is not an ambiguity as such because the court arguments and
ambiguity
I
in the sense कि fake,
yeah,
अगर ये लिखा गया है कि fake news, false news इनको identify किया जाएगा, तो किस news को आप fake news बोलोगे, ये बोल रही हूँ मैं। तो इसके
नहीं
regarding proper
basically
definition होनी
yeah,
चाहिए
I
ना।
understand your point. There are number of social radicalism भी है, infiltration भी होता है, organized crimes भी होते
डिफाइंड
हैं।
होना चाहिए ना जो चीज यहाँ पे मिसिंग है रूल्स में।
हाँ वो थोड़ा एक्सप्लेन कर सकते हैं बस।
हाँ, एक्सप्लेन वो होना चाहिए ना, प्रॉपरली डिफाइंड होना चाहिए फॉर आइडेंटिफिकेशन। अदरवाइज तो यही है कि पावर कॉन्सेंट्रेशन हो रही है इन दी हैंड्स ऑफ फैक्ट चेक यूनिट, जो अगेन सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट कंट्रोल करेगा, और आपने बोल दिया कि फेक फॉल्स मिसलीडिंग इंफॉर्मेशन आइडेंटिफाई की जाएगी, उसको रिमूव किया जाएगा, बट उसको आप कैसे कैटेगराइज कर रहे हो? तो इसकी यहाँ पे ट्रांसपेरेंसी और अकाउंटेबिलिटी होनी चाहिए ना। So at the Colombo meet, Jaishankar flags the dangers of unviable debt. So global rising debt एक problem है, which is again a global concern talk about. So India wants to be a friend to the world, the voice of the global south, and will work to ensure a free, open, inclusive Indian Ocean region. So these are three important things highlighted by our Minister of External Affairs at the annual meeting of 23 members, Indian Ocean Rim Association, which was held in Colombo. And he also raised the dangers of unsustainable debt. So here we also signed an agreement of signing of three agreements on bilateral cooperation. So the agreement that includes the Indian assistance for the housing projects, modernizing of the schools, and new joint project between Indian National Dairy Development Board and the Amul Cooperative and Sri Lankan Cargill Group to increase the milk production in Sri Lanka. So कुछ again new areas of development and cooperation है between India and Sri Lanka. Apart from this, the concern is participation of Sri Lanka in China's BRI, which is he is expected to discuss with the Sri Lankan debt crisis and the Chinese infrastructure projects. So even जो हम China की debt policy बोलते हैं, China in a way it misuses in its own favor. So initially the country thinks, or it appears to be कि China is aiding the country, but ultimately वो after a point of time it starts working in favor of China. So this policy is also one of the main reasons of the rising global debt. Even when we talk about the Indian neighborhood की countries की बात करें, so Sri Lanka is the best example of that, because how we saw the political instability and economic crisis, all of that happened, and then again we have Pakistan also. So talks in IMF की अगर हम बात करें, the conference in Colombo, it comes even as Sri Lanka's government, it is continuing the negotiations with the IMF for, again, the financial aid of around $2.9 billion, the bailout that they have received to avoid a debt crisis. And so proxy war की अगर हम बात करें, so at a time of global polarization, we are taking the position in Indian Ocean Rim Association that we want ocean free. It needs to be open, inclusive, rules-based ocean for the benefit of all the countries of the region. So we do not want anyone to play a proxy war in the Indian Ocean specific area. So Indian Ocean Rim Association is the Indian Ocean. It sees 86% of the global trade. It was the most important ocean. So that is why this is one of the reasons why Indian Ocean and having a rules-based order here is important, because otherwise it is going to lead to trade disruptions, which is again going to impact the supply chain that we have and ultimately lead to certain economic challenges in the form of inflation at the same time. So apart from this, factual information regarding in Indian Ocean Rim Association, like the member countries, the grouping, it was started in 1997 and it now includes 23 countries. So we need to be aware about countries there. They are from South Asia, Southeast Asia, Australia, West Asia, and Africa. So all the countries are situated around the Indian Ocean. So apart from this, 11 major powers, they are the dialogue partners also. So yes, Pravesh.
So I think despite unveiling the dangers of this unviable debt, which is between Sri Lanka and China and various other countries, especially Pakistan also. But despite that, these countries are not going to accord what India's position is, and they will go with China only. The reason being, if you look at data, so um, India's, you know, India's economic help in these countries in comparison to China is very limited. And obviously, because we have to maintain our domestic demands also, and because of the financial problems, we can't actually deliver a lot as China is doing. then the question comes here that how to take into account these countries so as to maintain a secure relations with these countries when we are seeing that they are more coming in nearby to China because of the economic ties, which are
Yeah.
very much good as far as the China is concerned.
So
So
herein
India can
between
play a role.
आपने
India can play a role by using its soft power now, and obviously we have some historical and cultural relations, especially with Sri Lanka. So we should revive that. Number second, we should increase the level of tourism, both the sides. That can also lead to a good thing. And third, we should try to do the skill development as we are doing in our country. We should try to provide some sort of economic help in the skill development in the Sri Lanka so as to work on the grassroots level. So these three actions will definitely going to help the countries to maintain Sri Lanka as its friend
I
rather
think
than
that
going
we are also
as a
going
friend.
ahead with the infrastructure projects also. But जो क्वेश्चन आपने इनिशियली रेज किया कि कंपैरेटिवली जब आप चाइना और इंडिया की बात कर रहे हो इन टर्म्स ऑफ फाइनेंशियल एड दैट वी आर प्रोवाइडिंग, तो इनिशियली जो ये चाइना की डेट पॉलिसी थी, दिस थिंग बेसिकली जो पार्टनर कंट्रीज थी दे वर नॉट अवेयर कि अल्टीमेटली इसका रिजल्ट क्या होगा. सो फॉर देम इट वाज अ सिंपल फाइनेंशियल एड कमिंग फ्रॉम चाइना, बट ऑफ लेट नाउ कंट्रीज or this thing has been basically recognized and realized by the countries कि this is kind of a debt trap for them countries. तो अगर countries को पता है कि क्या purpose है of giving this financial aid by China to them, तो why would they be going with this option? And apart
No,
from
they
this, अगर
are actually with China. They are actually with China. If you talk about Nepal, so Nepal,
नहीं वो
Maldives,
चीज अलग है
Sri
जो आप
Lanka, Pakistan.
फाइनेंशियल एड, क्या चाइना नेपाल को फाइनेंशियली एड कर रहा है?
Obviously, how you can deny this?
फाइनेंशियल एड इन द सेंस जो जिस तरीके से स्केल ऑफ फाइनेंशियल एड श्रीलंका को दिया गया या पाकिस्तान को दिया गया है, उस सेंस में मैं बात कर रही हूँ. वो जो
No,
या
हाँ,
थोड़ा बहुत लेवल का फाइनेंशियल एड है वो तो डेफिनेटली प्रोवाइड किया ही जा रहा है. बट बात है ना, जो ये डेट पॉलिसी के अंडर फाइनेंशियल एड इतना बड़ा अमाउंट आप दे देते हो किसी कंट्री को और कंट्री उसको रीपे करने की कैपेबिलिटी नहीं रखती, अल्टीमेटली वो उस डेट ट्रैप में फंस जाती है चाइना के. सो
मैं
ये
आपको एक एग्जांपल देता हूँ पाकिस्तान का. पाकिस्तान में सेम चीज हो रही है, लेकिन उसके बावजूद भी जो पाकिस्तान है, चाइना एंड पाकिस्तान आर वेरी गुड फ्रेंड टुडे. Obviously, we have some historical tensions with Pakistan, but डेप ट्रैप होने के बाद भी, डेप ट्रैप की कंडीशंस पता होने के बाद भी, पाकिस्तान इज विद चाइना, नॉट विद अदर कंट्रीज लाइक अदर मेगा
चाइना पाकिस्तान
इकोनॉमी.
का थोड़ा जो डायनामिक्स है उसमें और फैक्टर्स भी आ जाते हैं. आप जब बात करोगे पाकिस्तान की, पाकिस्तान की जो इकोनॉमी परफॉर्मेंस है वो अभी इमीडिएटली खराब नहीं हुई है, काफी टाइम से वो अगेन इट वाज नॉट सो कॉम्पिटिटिव जब आप बाकी कंट्रीज के साथ कंसिडर करो. एंड अपार्ट फ्रॉम दिस, पाकिस्तान को अगेन जो फॉरेन पॉलिसी की आप बात करते हो तो कौन सी कंट्री सपोर्ट करते हैं, तो पाकिस्तान के लिए थोड़े डायनामिक्स आई वुड से वुड बी इम्पैक्टिंग ऑल्सो. बट जब आप श्रीलंका की बात कर रहे हो तो श्रीलंका को आप नहीं बोल सकते हो कि इट वाज इकोनॉमिकली नॉट परफॉर्मिंग nicely before this financial aid or before this strengthening the relations
मैंने
with
तो ऐसे
China.
बोला ही नहीं, मैं तो सिंपली आपसे ये कह रहा हूँ कि इफ चाइना इज गिविंग अ लॉट ऑफ मनी more than India, if we talk about data, I'm not saying my personal view, this is data. So despite knowing that China is giving us a kind of debt trap thing, Sri Lanka is still with China. That is what my point is.
नहीं, आप कैसे कह सकते हो कि श्रीलंका is still with China, it is not with India?
I'm not saying it is not with India, but if you
नहीं,
talk in the
आपने ये
comparison,
बोला it is still with China, तो उसका मतलब यही होना it is not with India comparatively या इतना stronger way में with India compared to China.
नो, इसका मतलब ये बिल्कुल नहीं हुआ. मैंने तो ये कहा
नहीं,
ही
तो
नहीं कि
फिर
इंडिया
आप
के
क्या
साथ नहीं.
क्या
मैंने कहा कि
हाईलाइट
इंडिया
कर रहे
से, I am highlighting only this thing that despite knowing that we are under the debt because of the financial aid which is done by the China,
हो?
despite that there is no assertive argument by the Sri Lanka, and still the relations are very much good of China and Sri Lanka. So we should try to utilize this circumstance where we can use a soft power. As we are India, we can use a soft power to have an upper hand in the relations with Sri Lanka.
ओके, ठीक है. So Israel-Palestine war just continues. So India is likely to skip the China's BRI summit. So India did not attend the summits 2017 maybe हमने attend नहीं किया 2019 maybe having raised concerns about the China-Pakistan economic corridor project. So that's why India is going to skip this time as well because it violates our sovereignty rights. Coming to the business page, let's see important topics. So जब हम finance energy transition की बात करते हैं, financing for the green energy transition, so deeper bond markets are important for that. जब हम बात करते हैं when raising funds through green bonds, so herein HDFC Bank chairman is highlighted is called for deeper bond markets to facilitate efficient financing of India's energy transition goals, warning ki resorting to only bank finance for long gestation projects, it would lead to the sort of disasters जो हमने देखे even जो IL&FS crisis हुई थी, that was again NBFCs, they invest more in the projects जो high gestation period होता है. बट जो बैंकिंग फाइनेंस रहता है दैट इज फॉर शॉर्टर ड्यूरेशन, तो यहाँ पे जो मिसमैच होता है उसकी वजह से इट लीड्स टू डिफॉल्ट. So that is why even the importance of bond market becomes important when we talk about financing for the green energy transition projects, because bonds के through जो पैसा raise किया जाएगा that would be of a longer duration, so वो mismatch होने की possibility बहुत ही कम रहेगी. And this is okay, one thing when we talk about, and he also underlined the need to understand the risks which are associated with the new energy sources that are often papered over in the green transition narrative. So these were some important things highlighted by him. Okay, let's take up the newspaper. So here, fissured land, Israel, Palestine, Hamas. So the same thing goes here. So let's just find out the important things. So who are the players in this war? So the two main players, Israel, and is now in his sixth term. He has been prime minister for more than years than any other Israeli. So the right-wing politician has faced mass protests, including military reservists, and over the plans to curb the judiciary power. So of late, judicial reforms जो announce किए गए थे by the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, उसके regarding भी protests were going on in Israel. So Hamas is another party to this war. It is an Islamic group which governs Gaza and is opposed to the very existence of Israel. So its political wing is headed by Ismail Haniyeh and the armed wing by Mohammed Deif. So silent by the Hamas attack is the moderate president of the Palestine, Mohammed Abbas. So globally, he remains the face of Palestine. So three main parties are this, and then apart from this, we are having other countries supporting Israel, supporting Palestine. And then there is again issues between Hamas and Palestine also regarding the leadership. So what happened to the two-state solution? So the closest we came to this was the US brokered September 1995 Oslo Pacts, which were between the head of the Secular Palestine Liberation Organization and the Israeli Prime Minister. So it ended when Rabin was the Israeli prime minister back then when he was shot by a Jewish extremist 2 months later. So again, the things, they came back to the square one, and now the US president, he looks too preoccupied with the domestic challenges of the US and the Ukraine to make a move on West Asia. So that's why basically the two-state solution didn't come to a conclusion back then. Global implications kya hai? So it may get Joe Biden to finally consider brokering a peace in West Asia, because the likely short-term fallouts that is worrying because of shooting oil prices, global recession that we're already going through, specifically the advanced world, mounting resentment in the Islamic world, and galvanized militant groups, which is led by the Lebanon-based Hezbollah. So role of Iran, which backs both Shia Hezbollah and Sunni Hamas, that will be key. So again, role of Iran becomes very important in this entire crisis, and Netanyahu may solidify his position. Equally, he could be blamed for the military failure and he could get ousted as well. So there have been some calls already for a government of national unity at the same time. So political reforms in Israel, that is also an important component. So rest, we are going to continue in part 2 of our newspaper analysis session.